But you kind of never know what's gonna happen during these sessions, so we prefer to record and then see what happens. Welcome, everybody. Welcome into the space. Really happy to see you here. So we're going to be together for the next hour, and I will be hosting the space with you all. We're going to do a bit of practice, then I'm going to say a few words, and then we'll break out into breakout groups, just as a way to connect with each other, to perhaps engage by listening or by sharing or both. But really, in the next hour, you get to choose your own adventure. Show up as you are. Do your best to stay as fresh and as curious as is available for you right now. But ultimately, just take good care of yourself. This is your time. You've decided to be here for the next hour of your life. So so if you're willing to come along on a adventure with me to practice together, I'm going to guide us in what some of us on certain days might consider super duper basic practice. And yet the irony, I think, that many of us have discovered over the years is that super duper basic is really the most essential and at times the hardest. And so I'll share the context in two different ways. One, through practice, exploring what it means for breath to be a benefactor. And I've heard Paul introduce this in this last year. I forget the context, if it was in this space or another space, but when those words came together and kind of landed on this fertile ground of my mind and heart, they've been really working me in a really beautiful way. What does it mean for breath to be our benefactor? So we'll play with that in our formal practice, if you will, and then I'll just share a few words and then turn it over to you in the breakouts to explore how essential that relationship is to the call that I would propose for 2025 and perhaps the rest of our lives. And that call is to keep the shock alive. So I'll leave us hanging there for a minute, just so we can practice, but I'll return back to those words and that call after our practice. So take a minute to just find a comfortable posture. If today that means laying down, you're welcome to do that. If it means going off camera, you're welcome to do that. Really, what we're looking for here is wakefulness and alertness, coupled by a comfort and a coming home to. So, yeah, Susan's got the message. That includes a cozy blanket. Love it, love it. What does it mean to find your posture for this practice that invites a wakefulness with a gentleness? And so sometimes the The posture might require a slight shift, perhaps to the left or to the right, or noticing what happens if you drop your chin a bit, or perhaps raise your gaze or lower it. Just freshly playing around with your posture as just one doorway into a formal beginning of your practice. And thus allowing this body, with all of its beautiful curves and wrinkles and gray hairs, to be a potential anchor for a few moments, a potential returning back to. You notice your mind wandering off, then allow that sweet body of yours to be the place that you come back to with a gentle awareness. As soon as you notice that wandering off, perhaps noticing the space between the body and the sit bone or any other contact with the floor or the chair. Or maybe allowing your awareness to rest in the space where your body begins and ends, wherever that is for you today. And then whenever you're ready, allowing that quote unquote anchoring to loosen and to relax, and allow your awareness to simply be embodied. For me, this often means a pretty conscientious dropping from below the thinking mind, quite literally, and allowing the body to do the knowing. And for a few moments, just being that, being what's alive there. And so in this space, you might be reunited with that dear breath of yours. You may have already noticed the rise and fall of your belly, and the rise and fall of your chest, or perhaps the slight temperature change at the tips of your nostrils. And so just as we did with the body, allowing the breath to serve as an anchor, as a returning point, perhaps as a dear one by your side. Whenever you notice your mind wandering off, or perhaps a sensation calling your attention, whatever it is that arises, can also be met with the presence of your awareness on the breath. If at any point this feels not welcome this morning, feel free to return on back to your body or to another space of practice, perhaps outside of yourself and in the space around you, where you can gently allow your awareness to rest with all that is around you. So perhaps it's a painting or view out your window, or the feeling of your hand on your furry friend's back. But if hanging out with the breath is available this morning, then moving into the space of dropping any quote unquote anchoring or conceptualization and drifting into a space of being breathed, exploring the possibility of a space of joining, a space of unity between awareness and the breath. exploring the possibility that this relationship, that this oneness is both the means to as well as the end. Both a doorway into as well as the destination itself. And really inviting a wakeful, curious beginner's mind to this space. And so shifting your physical posture for a moment, or allowing a deeper inhale and exhale for another moment, or any other beginning again, it's all welcome. Inviting a noticing of a fresh relationship between this breath of ours, our body, our mind, our awareness. And perhaps in the space of being breathed, there's a possibility of allowing the mind to unfurl. unfurl into the embrace of the now, of all that is alive right now. And then for the next few moments, if it feels welcome for you, noticing what's happening to the breath, even in that space, and perhaps fluctuating and dipping back into a continued relationship with the breath. As we rest our weary souls. Now, for the last few moments, dropping any instructions or agendas, and just allowing a space of openness as much as is available for you this morning. And allowing yourself to gently come on back to the feeling of your body and the space around you. Perhaps it's the feeling of your sits bone against the cushion or the floor or any other contact points. Perhaps allowing a continued connection with that dear breath of yours as we raise our gaze, reorient into the space around us, including in front of us. Thank you for whatever it is that went on over there. Um, so my name is Anna Hristic. I use she, her pronouns. I live in Portland, Oregon. I'm excited to share space with you, and I've been a friend of this community for some time, and I'm grateful um, to have a chance to just share in of like what's alive for me today, and check in with you to see if that if anything might resonate with you in this regard. The beauty of Sangha is the beauty of community is to, yeah, check in every so often, if not more often than not. So what I wanted to just speak to briefly, but then really invite you all to be in conversation with yourself and with each other, perhaps groups of four or so, just so everybody has a chance to share a little bit if they wish. Is this invitation to do what we can to keep our capacity to be shocked alive. And I'll just return it back to me. I've been noticing both as I move through the world and in all the intersectional identities I move about, as a mom, as an immigrant, as a white woman, as a cisgender identity, and able body, and social worker, somebody's boss, but also somebody's employee, community member, daughter, and so on. As I move about the world and also move about my practice, interestingly enough, I've been noticing this very strong current toward a kind of conditioning, a kind of sleepiness, a kind of muting of my senses, of my attention, of my consciousness. Because otherwise, everywhere I turn, I'm in shock. My heart skips a beat, my breath skips a beat or two. Perhaps my body starts shaking. And it could be a shock of awe, of like, I don't even know if it's possible to love any more than I love my baby girl. I mean, I don't know if it's possible to just like unravel any more than I do on a daily basis when she holds up the mirror and allows me the opportunity to see all that I bring to the table and perhaps apologize for it. So, or maybe it's, as the sun is rising here in Portland, which is a rare occurrence, but it is really an awe-inspiring sight. And my heart does skip a beat. Or perhaps the shock is the shock of so many dear ones in my community hurting so badly, as though their birthright for ample sustenance and shelter and connection is up for political discussion, is up for positional discussion, is up for discussion, period, at any table. So that's a different kind of shock. But so too, my breath is taken away. My heart skips a beat. My body shakes. And I guess what I've come to is a kind of returning back to the only thing I know, which is my practice, the only sandbox that I've continue to play in and therefore, have some muscle memory for, is returning back to quote unquote the most basic part of my practices, and that includes that of the breath, um, that of relationship with my breath. Because the moments when I'm not in touch with my breath are the moments when I'm not feeling that shock, even though it's actually happening, right? Even though my body is very much responding to the world around it, the current is so strong for me to actually not feel that, right? The current of the next shiny thing, the current of the ways in which our attention is co-opted, the current of pull it together for the sake of all, whatever the current is, right? And I'm not consenting to that. I'm not up for that. I actually never said yes to that. And so what I'd like to say yes to, what I'd like to consent to, is a kind of reclaiming of relationship to my body and to my breath, so that I can actually be aware of every moment my heart breaks. I can actually be aware of every moment my jaw drops. Again, both for the quote unquote good and the bad. But I want to consent to being awake, wide awake to the world around me. And so my invitation is to consider where in your life these days, perhaps in what relationship or in what arena, right? The parenting arena, the work arena, the community volunteer arena, the teacher arena, or what relationship. Perhaps it's the relationship with your aging parent or your relationship to fill in the blank. But in what arena would you invite this very consensual wakefulness as you enter 2025? Um, Perhaps because you're noticing the opposite happening. In what arena of your life, or in what relationship and what dynamic are you finding yourself in where you would like to keep the shock alive? You would like to perhaps explore how the breath could be the greatest benefactor, as one to journey with you and to bring along all the information that it does. It's quite remarkable, actually. All the nuances to the breath, bring along all the information that it does, but also be the avenue through which we can access all else that is alive in that moment too, right? All of our other practices, our underlying cosmology doesn't go away with this invitation of a particular focus. If anything, it actually perhaps allows us to access it even more. So there is the question, if you're willing to play along and share in with each other. And again, your participation could be just holding space or just sharing or just doing both, whatever that is for you. But the question is, in what spaces of your life, if any, what relationships or what spaces would you like to invite this poignant relationship of breath as benefactor, so as to reawaken a wakefulness that may include shock, that may include the flutter of your heart or the skip of a beat or the nuances of your breath. So I'll pause